My name is Almira, and at 32, I never thought I would watch our entire company crumble in a single morning. As the IT manager at TechVision, I knew exactly what was happening when our systems crashed. The warning signs had been there for months, ever since my boss slashed our domain renewal budget with a smirk. Now I stood in the chaos of blaring phones and panicked coworkers, thinking about how easily this could have been prevented. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe, as I share how one budget cut led to our digital apocalypse. The fluorescent lights of TechVision headquarters hummed above me as I sipped my morning coffee, scrolling through system reports on my laptop. It was something I had done every morning for the past 8 years. As the IT manager overseeing our network infrastructure, I prided myself on anticipating problems before they happened. With my computer science degree and multiple certifications, I had climbed from help desk technician to managing a team of 5 IT professionals who kept our 200-employee company running smoothly. TechVision had started as a small software development firm, creating customer relationship management tools. Over the years, we had expanded into cloud services, mobile applications, and enterprise solutions. Our growth had been steady and impressive, attracting attention from investors and competitors alike. Our modern office space occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, with open work areas, colorful meeting rooms named after famous scientists, and a well-stocked break room that was the envy of neighboring businesses. 8 months ago, the board hired Marcus Hamilton as our new executive director. Marcus came with an impressive resume of turning struggling tech companies into profitable ventures, primarily through aggressive cost-cutting measures. Tall and imposing, with perfectly tailored suits and a Harvard MBA he mentioned in every conversation, Marcus carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed efficiency and profitability trumped all other concerns. From day one, Marcus made it clear that TechVision needed to trim what he called the fat. In his first company-wide meeting, he stood at the front of our largest conference room and declared, "Every department will need to identify 15% of non-essential expenses to eliminate. We are going to run lean and mean." My closest colleague at TechVision was Jared Parker, our head of engineering. With his unruly dark hair and collection of faded band t-shirts under wrinkled button-ups, Jared looked more like a college student than the brilliant mind managing our development team. We had started at the company within months of each other and had formed a strong professional bond over late-night system migrations and emergency patches. Sandra Wilson served as our chief financial officer, a sharp-minded woman in her late 40s who balanced Marcus's aggressive cost-cutting with practical financial sense. She had been with the company almost since its founding and understood the technical side enough to appreciate why certain expenditures were necessary. Then there was Trevor Reynolds, my most reliable IT team member. Fresh out of college 3 years ago, Trevor had quickly proven himself as detail-oriented and dedicated. He maintained meticulous documentation of our systems and often stayed late to ensure updates completed successfully. When the budget-cutting initiative began, each department submitted their financial plans with trepidation. I spent weeks analyzing our IT expenditures, identifying areas where we could reasonably reduce costs without compromising our infrastructure. We eliminated some redundant software licenses, postponed hardware upgrades that could wait another year, and renegotiated with several vendors for better rates. But I was careful to protect what I considered essential security software backup systems and our domain registrations. TechVision operated more than 20 domains for our various products, services, and international markets. Our main domain housed our corporate website and email system, while subsidiary domains supported specific product lines, development environments, and client portals. Each domain required annual renewal, with costs varying based on the top-level domain and registration service. When Marcus announced the mandatory 15% cuts across all departments, I felt relatively secure. My team had already streamlined operations significantly over the past 2 years, and I believed our remaining expenses could be justified as essential to business operations. In my 8 years at TechVision, previous leadership had always trusted my judgment on technical matters. I expected Marcus would do the same once I explained the critical nature of our infrastructure costs. I was wrong. The quarterly budget meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in the Newton conference room. I arrived early, arranging my presentation materials and rehearsing my explanations for various line items. Sandra entered first, giving me an encouraging smile as she took her seat near the head of the table. Jared arrived next, looking tired from a late-night coding session, but offering a thumbs up as he dropped into a chair beside me. Other department heads filtered in each, carrying similar folders of budget proposals and justifications. Marcus entered last precisely at 9 a.m., carrying nothing but his smartphone and an air of authority. "Let us not waste time," he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "We have a lot to get through today." Little did I know this meeting would set in motion a disaster that would bring our entire company to its knees. The Newton conference room fell quiet as Marcus directed each department head to present their budget proposals. Marketing went first, followed by human resources and product development. Each presentation was met with pointed questions and suggestions for further cuts. When my turn came, I straightened my posture and opened my carefully prepared spreadsheet on the projector screen. For the IT department, I began confidently. I have identified savings in several areas, including postponing our planned server upgrades and consolidating some of our software licenses. I clicked through to the next slide, showing our domain registration costs. However, there are certain infrastructure costs that must be maintained, including our domain registrations. We currently maintain 23 domains for our various services and products. Marcus leaned forward, tapping his expensive fountain pen against his notepad. 23 domains. That seems excessive. Why do we need so many? I had anticipated this question. Our main domain, techvision.com, houses our corporate site and email services. The others support specific product lines, international markets, and development environments. For example, techvisioncloudsuite.com is used for our cloud service platform, while techvisionmobile.io serves our mobile application users. "And these all need separate domains?" Marcus asked, his tone skeptical. "Yes," I explained, switching to a diagram showing how our services interconnected. Our architecture is designed with these domains as access points for different services. Our clients have these addresses bookmarked hard, coded into their systems, and saved in their contact lists. Plus, having separate domains provides security isolation between services. Marcus drummed his fingers on the table. "How much are we spending on these domains annually?" I displayed the cost breakdown. Our annual domain budget is $12,300. This includes registration fees, premium services for the main domain, and security certificates. Marcus made a dismissive sound. $12,000 for website addresses. That is ridiculous. "It is standard for a company of our size," I countered. "And considering the revenue these domains support, it is actually quite cost-effective." Marcus picked up his red pen and dramatically drew a line through my domain budget. "The mission requires us to trim the non-core expenses," he said firmly. "We will keep the main domain, of course, but these subsidiary domains are unnecessary luxuries. Companies operate with a single domain all the time." My heart rate accelerated. "Sir, with all due respect, these domains are not luxuries. They are integral to our infrastructure. Clients access our services through these addresses. If they expire, our systems will fail." "You are being dramatic," Almira," Marcus replied with a condescending smile. "We will keep the main domain, and you can redirect traffic as needed. Consider your non-essential domains trimmed." I looked to Sandra for support, noticing her uncomfortable expression. She cleared her throat softly. "Marcus, I think we should consider Almira's expertise here. Domain structures can be quite important for technical operations." "Thank you, Sandra," I said quickly. Changing our domain structure would require significant development work to reconfigure all our services. It would actually cost much more than maintaining the current domains. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "One domain is enough for now. If we need to add more later, we can revisit the issue. But for this quarter, we are cutting the extra domains. Next department, please." Jared caught my eye across the table, giving me a subtle nod of support, but he remained silent. I felt a flush of anger rising in my cheeks as Marcus moved on to the next presentation, as if he had not just potentially doomed our entire infrastructure. As the meeting continued, I sat in stunned silence, mentally calculating the expiration dates of our various domains and the cascade of failures that would occur when they lapsed. Some domains would expire within weeks, others months, but eventually even our main domain would come up for renewal. When the meeting finally ended, I gathered my materials with shaking hands. As others filed out, Jared approached me. "That was rough," he said quietly. "What are you going to do?" "I do not know," I admitted. He does not understand what he is asking. When these domains expire, anyone can purchase them. We could lose control of our own services. Maybe you can talk to him one-on-one, Jared suggested. Sometimes these executive types need a different approach. I nodded, though I felt little hope. As I walked back to my office, the weight of responsibility pressed down on me. I had just been ordered to allow critical infrastructure to fail, and I had no idea how to prevent the impending disaster. The following morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, determined to build a stronger case for maintaining our domain registrations. The quiet of the empty office allowed me to focus as I compiled data on domain infrastructure, security risks, and business impact assessments. By 8 a.m., I had created a comprehensive report that I believed even Marcus could not dismiss. When Trevor arrived at 8:30, I waved him into my office. "I need your help with something," I told him, pushing a printout of our domain expiration schedule across my desk. Trevor adjusted his glasses as he studied the document. "These are all our active domains and the renewal dates." "Yes," I confirmed. "Marcus has cut the budget for renewing anything except the main techvision.com domain. I need to understand exactly what will break and when." Trevor's eyes widened. "Everything will break, Almira. Our authentication services run through techvisionsecure.net, which expires in 3 weeks. Without that, users cannot log into any of our products." "Document it all," I instructed. "Every service, every dependency, every potential point of failure. I need ammunition for another conversation with Marcus." Trevor nodded gravely and returned to his desk while I continued refining my presentation. Around 10 a.m., Jared stopped by, coffee in hand. "How are you holding up?" he asked, closing my office door. "Not great," I admitted. "I am building a case to take to Marcus, but I am not optimistic." Jared took a seat across from me. "The engineering team is concerned. Those domains are hardwired into our architecture. Changing everything would take months of development time." "Exactly," I said, turning my monitor to show him my analysis. "I have calculated the development hours required to restructure our services. At current rates, it would cost approximately 8 times more than simply renewing the domains." "Can I help?" Jared offered. "Maybe if we both approach him?" "Let me try first," I decided. "If he shuts me down, having you as backup might help." I emailed Marcus's assistant to request a meeting emphasizing the urgent nature of my concerns. To my surprise, I received a response within the hour scheduling me for a 15-minute slot that afternoon. I spent my lunch break rehearsing my arguments, determined to be concise and persuasive. At 2 p.m., I knocked on Marcus's office door, report in hand. His spacious corner office featured floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city skyline. Minimalist furniture and a large abstract painting created an atmosphere of expensive simplicity. "Come in, Almira," Marcus said, without looking up from his computer. "You have 15 minutes. What is so urgent?" I took a seat and placed my report on his desk. I wanted to discuss the domain registration budget. "I have prepared a detailed analysis of the business impact if we allow these domains to expire." Marcus glanced at the report without touching it. "I thought we settled this yesterday." "With respect, sir, I do not think the full implications were clear," I pressed on. "Our entire service architecture depends on these domain names. Clients access our products through these addresses. If they expire, our services will become inaccessible." "So set up redirects," Marcus replied, leaning back in his chair. "One domain can handle multiple services." I shook my head. "It is not that simple. Our authentication system, data storage, and API endpoints all rely on specific domain names. Changing this would require significant redevelopment." I pointed to a page in my report. "I have calculated the development costs here. It would be approximately 8 times more expensive than simply maintaining our current domains." Marcus finally picked up the report, flipping through it with obvious impatience. "These numbers seem inflated." "They are based on our standard development rates and time estimates from the engineering team," I countered. "Jared has reviewed and confirmed them." Marcus set the report down. "Almira, I appreciate your thoroughness, but my decision stands. We will maintain the main domain only. Your team will need to adapt." "But, sir, the first domains expire in less than a month. We cannot possibly restructure our services in that time frame." "Then I suggest you prioritize," he said curtly. "Your 15 minutes are up." "Was there anything else?" I stood, frustration burning in my chest. "No, sir. Thank you for your time." As I left his office, I realized I needed a different strategy. If technical arguments would not sway Marcus, perhaps financial ones would. I headed straight to Sandra's office, hoping our CFO might provide the support I needed. Sandra was reviewing financial reports when I knocked on her door. "Almira, come in," she said warmly. "I have been expecting you after yesterday's meeting." I took a seat across from her desk. "Sandra, I need your help. Marcus does not understand the implications of cutting our domain budget. It will cost us far more in the long run." Sandra sighed, removing her reading glasses. "I suspected as much. Technical infrastructure is not his strong suit." I handed her a copy of my report. "These domains are critical to our operations. If they expire, our services will fail, and we will lose clients. The development cost to restructure everything would dwarf the renewal fees." Sandra reviewed the numbers carefully. "These figures are concerning. Have you presented this to Marcus?" "Just now," I confirmed. "He dismissed it outright." Sandra pursed her lips. "Unfortunately, Marcus has final authority on budgetary decisions. The board hired him specifically to cut costs, and he has been given considerable latitude." "So, there is nothing we can do?" I asked, disappointment evident in my voice. "I can try to speak with him," Sandra offered, "but I cannot override his decision. My suggestion is to document everything meticulously. When problems arise, having a paper trail showing you raised concerns will be important." I left Sandra's office feeling defeated. Back at my desk, I found Trevor waiting with his analysis of our domain dependencies. "It is worse than I thought," he said, handing me a detailed spreadsheet. "Every major service we offer depends on at least one of these domains." I thanked him and spent the rest of the afternoon contemplating my options. I could continue fighting a losing battle with Marcus, or I could prepare for the inevitable fallout. Part of me wanted to secretly renew the domains using my personal credit card, but that would violate company financial policies and potentially cost me my job. As I drove home that evening, a dangerous thought formed in my mind. Perhaps the only way to prove I was right was to let the disaster happen. If Marcus would not listen to warnings, maybe he would learn from experience. It was a risky strategy that could harm the company and our clients, but I was running out of alternatives. That night I barely slept, torn between professional responsibility and obedience to authority. By morning I had made my decision. I would document everything, meticulously warn everyone I could, and prepare to handle the crisis when it inevitably came. Sometimes I reasoned the only way to fix a broken system is to let it break completely. The first automated domain expiration notice arrived in my inbox exactly 3 weeks after the budget meeting. Our authentication domain techvisionsecure.net would expire in 7 days. Following company protocol, I forwarded the notice to Marcus with a brief reminder of the potential consequences. His reply came an hour later, noted, "As discussed, we are not renewing subsidiary domains. Prepare your team to handle any necessary adjustments." I printed his response and added it to my growing folder of documentation. Then I called an emergency meeting with my IT team to prepare for the inevitable fallout. "So, we are really just going to let these domains expire?" Trevor asked, disbelief evident in his voice, as we gathered in the small IT conference room. "We have no choice," I replied. "I have exhausted every avenue to change the decision. Now we need to prepare for damage control." I assigned each team member specific responsibilities for when the domains began to expire. Trevor would monitor user authentication issues. Melissa would handle client communications. David would focus on internal systems, and Ryan would track attempts to access expired domains. I would coordinate our response and manage communication with leadership. Document everything I instructed. Every issue, every affected client, every minute spent addressing problems. We need to quantify the impact. The team nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of our situation. As they filed out of the conference room, Jared entered, having overheard the end of our meeting. Preparing for the apocalypse, he asked, attempting humor, despite his concerned expression. "Something like that," I admitted. "The first domain expires in a week, the authentication one." Jared winced. "That is going to be messy. My team is already getting requests to build workarounds, but there is no way we can reconfigure everything in time." "I know," I said. "Just make sure your team documents all the development hours spent on emergency fixes. We need to track the real cost of this decision." Over the next week, I sent daily reminders to Marcus about the impending expiration, each one meeting with increasingly terse responses. The day before the authentication domain was set to expire, I made one final attempt visiting his office with a printed timeline of expected failures. Tomorrow, users will begin experiencing login failures across all our platforms, I explained. By the end of the week, customer support will be overwhelmed with complaints. We need to renew this domain immediately. Marcus set the timeline aside without reading it. Almira, these scare tactics are becoming tiresome. Companies adapt to changes all the time. Your team will handle it. This is not a scare tactic, I insisted. This is reality. Technical systems have technical requirements. And managers have budgetary requirements, he countered. This conversation is over. I returned to my office seething with frustration. That evening, I stayed late running final checks on our monitoring systems and preparing emergency response procedures. When I finally left the building, the weight of impending disaster sat heavy on my shoulders. The next morning, I arrived at 6 a.m., knowing the authentication domain would expire at midnight Pacific time, 3 a.m. our time. I checked our monitoring dashboard and saw exactly what I expected. The first authentication failures had begun. As the business day started on the East Coast, the trickle of errors became a flood. By 9 a.m., our customer support lines were ringing constantly. Users could not log into their accounts, access their data, or use our services. Trevor appeared in my doorway, his expression grim. "It is starting," he said, unnecessarily. "The authentication domain is officially gone. Users who were already logged in are still connected, but anyone trying to authenticate is getting errors." I nodded. As expected. Has anyone claimed the domain yet? Not yet, Trevor reported. But it is only a matter of time before someone snatches it up. Throughout the day, my team worked tirelessly implementing temporary workarounds where possible. Jared's engineering team began the monumental task of reconfiguring services to work through our main domain, but the process was slow and fraught with complications. Marcus remained conspicuously absent from the IT department, though I received a terse email requesting an update on the temporary login issues. I responded with detailed statistics: 427 active users currently locked out of services, 38 support tickets filed, and an estimated 160 development hours required for emergency fixes. The next domain to expire controlled our API endpoints for mobile applications. When it lapsed 5 days later, our mobile users found their apps completely non-functional. Customer complaints doubled and our support team began reporting that clients were threatening to cancel their contracts. Sandra visited my office as the crisis deepened. "This is worse than I anticipated," she admitted, closing the door behind her. "Marcus is getting pressure from the board about service disruptions." "Is he finally ready to reconsider the domain renewals?" I asked. "Not exactly," Sandra replied. "He is asking why your team was not better prepared for the transition." I laughed bitterly. "Of course he is. I have documented every warning, every explanation, every attempt to prevent this. My team is working around the clock on fixes that would not have been necessary if we had simply renewed the domains." "Keep documenting," Sandra advised. "The board is starting to ask questions." As the weeks passed, more domains expired, and our digital infrastructure continued to crumble. Development teams worked overtime attempting to consolidate services under our main domain, but the architecture had never been designed for such a configuration. Temporary fixes introduced new bugs, and client satisfaction ratings plummeted. Trevor, who had been monitoring domain registrations, brought me concerning news 30 days into the crisis. "Someone has registered 3 of our expired domains," he reported. "They are not pointing anywhere yet, but they could be used for phishing or intercepting our traffic." This security threat added a new dimension to our problems. I immediately drafted a risk assessment and sent it to Marcus, Sandra, and our legal team. The response was a company-wide security alert and mandatory password resets, creating even more frustration for our already struggling users. Through it all, I maintained meticulous records of every issue, every cost, and every warning I had provided. Some nights I stayed at the office until midnight, coordinating emergency responses and preparing for the next failure. My team was exhausted, morale was plummeting, and I found myself questioning whether I should have fought harder or found some way to circumvent Marcus's decision. Then came the morning I had been dreading most. According to my expiration calendar, our main domain techvision.com would expire in 24 hours. This was the domain that housed our corporate website email systems and served as the new foundation for our hastily reconfigured services. If it expired, the company would effectively cease to exist online. I sent an urgent message to Marcus, copying the entire executive team, critical main domain techvision.com, expires tomorrow. Without immediate renewal, all company services, including email, will become inaccessible. Estimated business impact: total operational failure. For the first time since the crisis began, Marcus's response showed a hint of concern. Come to my office first thing tomorrow morning. As I powered down my computer that evening, I felt a strange mix of dread and vindication. Tomorrow would bring either a resolution or complete disaster. Either way, the true cost of Marcus's decision would finally become impossible to ignore. I barely slept that night, checking my phone hourly for any system alerts. By 5 a.m., I gave up on rest entirely and drove to the office through the quiet pre-dawn streets. The techvision.com domain would expire at 11:26 a.m., our time giving us a few hours to prepare for the worst. When I arrived, I was surprised to find Trevor already at his desk, eyes red from lack of sleep. Could not stay away, I asked, setting down my third coffee of the morning. Wanted to be here when it all goes down, he replied, not looking away from his monitors. I have set up tracking for all our services. We will see them fail in real time. Morbidly thorough, I commented, appreciating his dedication despite the circumstances. By 8 a.m., the office began filling with employees unaware that their workday would soon be dramatically interrupted. I had warned the executive team and department heads, but Marcus had forbidden a company-wide announcement claiming it would cause unnecessary panic. At 9 a.m., sharp Marcus's assistant called to inform me that he was ready for our meeting. I gathered my laptop and documentation folder before heading to his office. When I arrived, I found not just Marcus, but the entire executive team waiting, including Sandra and Jared. Almira. Marcus began, his tone uncharacteristically subdued. I have asked everyone to join us because I understand there is significant concern about our domain situation. Concern is an understatement, I replied, taking the last empty seat. Our main domain expires in less than 3 hours. When that happens, our email will stop working, our website will go down, and any services we have managed to keep running through temporary fixes will fail. Surely we can renew it today, Marcus said, as if this were a simple matter of paperwork. It is not that simple, I explained, opening my laptop to display our domain registration portal. We have a grace period to renew after expiration, yes, but our services will still go offline when the registration ends. More importantly, our email will stop functioning immediately, which means we will not receive the renewal confirmation or verification emails necessary to expedite the restoration. So renew it now, Marcus instructed, waving his hand impatiently. I cannot, I said evenly. You removed my budget authority for domain renewals. Remember, I would need financial approval and a purchase order, which typically takes 3 business days to process. Marcus looked to Sandra. Can we expedite this? Sandra nodded. I can issue emergency approval, but Almira is correct about the technical delays even after payment. Our services will still experience downtime. How long? Marcus demanded. Best case scenario, a few hours, I answered. Worst case, several days. It depends on how quickly the registrar processes the renewal and updates the DNS records. Marcus removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. I was under the impression these matters were more flexible. I explained the technical realities very clearly. I reminded him, sliding forward a printed copy of the report I had presented weeks ago. Page 12 details the exact scenario we are facing today. Before Marcus could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Authentication servers just went down. It is starting. As if on cue, the office phones began ringing throughout the building. The first employees were discovering they could not access their email or log into company systems. I checked the time, 10:42 a.m. Earlier than expected. It is happening already, I announced to the room. Our authentication services have failed. The domain expiration is cascading through our systems faster than anticipated. Marcus stood abruptly. Fix it. Whatever it costs, whatever you need. Fix it now. I will do what I can, I replied, gathering my materials. But I warned you this was coming. We could have prevented it entirely for a fraction of what it will now cost to repair. As I left the conference room, the office was descending into chaos. Employees stood in clusters, staring at their useless computers or frantically trying their phones. Customer service representatives were unable to access support systems or respond to the flood of incoming complaints. I hurried back to the IT department, where my team was already implementing our emergency response plan. Trevor had set up a status board displaying each system and its current state: red for offline, yellow for degraded, green for functional. Nearly everything was red. Our external monitoring service confirms it, Trevor reported. All TechVision domains are unreachable. Email servers are rejecting connections. Website returns a registrar parking page. I nodded grimly. Sandra is processing an emergency renewal, but we will be down for hours at minimum. Start the backup communication protocol. Our backup plan involved using personal email addresses and phones to coordinate until systems could be restored. It was clumsy and inefficient, but it was all we had. By 11:30 a.m., the situation had deteriorated further. Without email, our employees could not communicate with clients or each other. Without our website, potential customers found only an error page. Without our authentication services, even internal tools were inaccessible. Marcus appeared in the IT department, his composed facade cracking as he surveyed the wall of red status indicators. "This is worse than I understood," he admitted, watching staff members scramble to implement contingency plans. "What is our next step?" "We have initiated emergency renewal procedures," I explained, not bothering to hide my frustration. "But even after payment propagation will take time. Furthermore, we have discovered that 3 of our critical subsidiary domains have already been purchased by third parties after they expired. We will need to negotiate to buy them back, likely at significant markups." Marcus paled visibly. "How significant?" "Domain speculators typically charge anywhere from 10 to 50 times the standard registration fee," I explained. "Sometimes more for domains with established commercial value." Before Marcus could respond, Jared rushed into the department, laptop in hand. "Emergency executive meeting in 5 minutes," he announced. "The board is calling in." An hour later, I found myself in the main conference room with the executive team and board members joining by phone, since our video conferencing system was down. The board chairman's voice filled the room from the speakerphone, tense with barely controlled anger. "Would someone please explain how our entire company has been taken offline by what appears to be a simple administrative oversight?" Marcus cleared his throat. "There has been an unfortunate lapse in our domain renewal process. We are working to resolve it immediately." "This was not a lapse," I interjected, unable to contain myself. "This was a deliberate decision to cut the domain registration budget despite explicit warnings about the consequences." The chairman's voice sharpened. "Is this true, Marcus?" Marcus adjusted his tie uncomfortably. "I made a determination that we could consolidate our online presence to reduce costs. I may have underestimated the technical complexities involved." "Underestimated?" Jared repeated incredulously. He opened his laptop and turned it to face Marcus. On the screen was the domain registration information for techvision.com, showing its expired status. "This is not a technical complexity. This is basic business infrastructure." Marcus slowly removed his glasses and set them on the table, whispering, "Oh no," as the full magnitude of the situation finally seemed to dawn on him. The board chairman's voice cut through the silence. "I want hourly updates on the recovery process. And when systems are restored, we will have a comprehensive review of how this decision was made and why the warnings were ignored." As the meeting adjourned, I returned to the IT department to continue our recovery efforts. The damage was done. Now we could only work to contain it and rebuild from the ruins of our digital presence. The following 72 hours were the most intense of my professional career. My IT team worked in continuous shifts, sleeping on office couches when exhaustion overtook them. We established a command center in the large conference room walls covered with status updates and recovery timelines. Our main domain was restored after 16 hours of downtime once the emergency payment processed and DNS records propagated. Email services came back online gradually, with full functionality returning after 24 hours. Internal systems followed, though many required reconfiguration due to the extended outage. The most difficult challenge was recovering our subsidiary domains. 3 had been purchased by domain speculators within hours of expiration. Our legal team initiated negotiations, but the asking prices were astronomical: $45,000 for techvisionsecure.net, $38,000 for techvisionappy.com, and $52,000 for techvisioncloud.io. Sandra approved the payments without question, a stark contrast to the budget constraints that had created the crisis. "Whatever it takes," she told me. "The board has authorized emergency funds to resolve this immediately." The human cost was equally significant. Customer support was overwhelmed with complaints and cancellation requests. Our reputation had taken a severe hit with technology blogs and social media buzzing about our amateur hour infrastructure failure. Most painfully, we lost 7 major clients who cited the outage as a breach of our service level agreements. 5 days after the initial crash with most services finally restored, the board called an all-hands meeting. Employees gathered in the largest conference room, with others joining via hastily restored video links. The tension was palpable as the board chairman addressed the company. "This week has been challenging for TechVision," he began, his voice grave. "The service outage we experienced was unprecedented and unacceptable. Our clients deserve better, and so do all of you." He continued, outlining the immediate recovery efforts and customer retention strategies. Then came the accountability portion. This situation resulted from a serious error in judgment regarding critical infrastructure. The board has conducted a review of the decision-making process and determined that significant changes are needed in our operational governance. Marcus sat stiffly in the front row, staring straight ahead, as the chairman announced a new approval process for budget decisions affecting technical infrastructure. Technical leads would now have protected budget categories that could not be cut without board review. When the general meeting concluded, department heads were called to remain for a more detailed discussion. I found myself seated across from Marcus at the conference table, my folder of domain warning documentation in front of me. The board chairman addressed us directly. "We need complete transparency about how this happened to ensure it never occurs again. Almira, please walk us through the events from your perspective." Taking a deep breath, I opened my folder and presented the timeline of the initial budget meeting where Marcus cut the domain renewals. My multiple attempts to explain the consequences, the explicit warnings I had sent as each deadline approached, and the final alerts about our main domain. I made the technical implications clear at every step. I concluded. This was not a technical failure, but a governance failure. Marcus finally spoke, his voice subdued. "I accept responsibility for this decision. I believed we were eliminating unnecessary expenses, and I disregarded the technical advice I was given. It was a serious misjudgment." The chairman nodded, "and an expensive one. Our preliminary damage assessment shows we have lost approximately $2.3 million in client contracts, paid $95,000 to recover critical domains, and incurred an estimated $400,000 in emergency response costs and overtime." I could not help but add, compared to the $12,300 it would have cost to simply renew the domains as recommended. The room fell silent as the numbers spoke for themselves. Moving forward, the chairman continued. "We are implementing new protocols. Technical infrastructure decisions will require sign-off from both financial and technical leadership. Almira, your department will have protected budget categories for essential systems, including domain registrations." I nodded, feeling a mix of vindication and lingering frustration. "Thank you. I believe that will help prevent similar issues in the future." After the meeting, Jared approached me in the hallway. "That was quite a presentation. How long have you been documenting everything?" "Since the first budget cut," I admitted. "I knew this was coming, though I hoped to be proven wrong." Jared smiled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side. How are you holding up?" "Exhausted," I replied honestly, but relieved that something good might come from this disaster. Later that afternoon, Sandra stopped by my office with unexpected news. "The board has approved a special compensation package for you and your team in recognition of your extraordinary efforts during the crisis." "That is appreciated," I said, "but what we really need is structural change so this never happens again." "You are getting that too," Sandra assured me. "Marcus has been placed on probation, and all his technical decisions will require approval from the appropriate department heads going forward." The most surprising moment came the following day when Marcus himself appeared in my doorway. He seemed smaller somehow, his usual confidence diminished. "Almira, do you have a moment?" he asked, uncharacteristically tentative. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, curious about this unexpected visit. Marcus sat down carefully, placing his folded hands on his lap. "I owe you an apology. You were right about the domains, and I was wrong to dismiss your expertise." I studied him, searching for sincerity. "Thank you for acknowledging that. I have spent my career focusing on financial efficiency," he continued. "But I failed to understand that some costs are investments in stability. I should have listened to you." "Yes, you should have," I agreed, not softening my stance. "Technical decisions require technical understanding." Marcus nodded. The board has made that abundantly clear. Going forward, I would like to establish a better working relationship. Perhaps regular briefings where you can help me understand the technical implications of financial decisions. It was an olive branch, and despite my lingering frustration, I recognized the value in building a more collaborative relationship. I think that would be beneficial for the company. As Marcus left my office, I turned to the window reflecting on the tumultuous events of the past week. The crisis had been painful and unnecessary, but it had also created an opportunity for positive change. Sometimes systems need to break before they can be rebuilt stronger. 3 months after the domain crisis, TechVision operated under a new governance structure that balanced financial discipline with technical reality. The most visible change was our monthly infrastructure review meeting, where technical leads and financial officers collaborated on budget decisions affecting critical systems. My role had expanded significantly. I now reported directly to the board on infrastructure stability and participated in strategic planning sessions previously closed to department managers. The crisis had painfully demonstrated the importance of technical voice in leadership decisions. Marcus remained as executive director, but with modified responsibilities. His cost-cutting focus was now tempered by a requirement to consult with technical leads before implementing changes to infrastructure budgets. To his credit, he had embraced this new approach with humility. One Tuesday morning, Marcus stopped by my office for our now regular coffee meeting. "The board approved your infrastructure upgrade proposal," he announced, placing the signed document on my desk. "All of it?" I asked, surprised. The proposal included significant investments in redundancy systems I had been requesting for years. Marcus nodded. The business continuity section was particularly compelling. "I have learned my lesson about false economies." I appreciate that I said genuine gratitude in my voice. It will make our systems much more resilient. "That is what I am counting on," Marcus replied with a small smile. "No more avoidable disasters on my watch." This new dynamic represented a significant shift from our adversarial beginning. We would never be friends, but we had developed a mutual respect that served the company well. Marcus had valuable financial insights, and I had technical expertise. Together, we created balanced decisions that neither of us would have reached alone. The domain crisis had ripple effects throughout the organization. Sandra implemented new financial approval processes that included technical risk assessments for cost-cutting measures. Jared's engineering team developed architecture documentation that clearly illustrated dependencies, making technical necessities more visible to non-technical staff. Trevor had emerged from the crisis with new confidence and responsibilities. His meticulous documentation during the outage had proven invaluable, earning him a promotion to infrastructure security lead. "I never want to live through another week like that," he told me one day, "but I learned more in those 72 hours than in 3 years of normal operations." Our client relationships had required careful rebuilding. I participated in numerous meetings with affected customers, explaining the new safeguards we had implemented to prevent future outages. Many appreciated the transparency, though some wounds healed slower than others. The 7 clients we lost during the crisis served as a constant reminder of the real cost of our failure. On a personal level, the experience transformed my approach to leadership. Before the crisis, I had often deferred to executive decisions even when I knew they were technically flawed. The domain disaster taught me that remaining silent out of organizational deference could cause more harm than speaking up even persistently. 6 months after the crisis, the board invited me to present at their annual strategic retreat. My topic was technical infrastructure as business foundation, and I used our domain failure as the central case study. Standing before the company leadership, I felt a confidence that had been hard-won through crisis and recovery. "Infrastructure decisions seem abstract until they fail," I explained, displaying a graph of our revenue drop during the outage. "Domain names, server capacity, security certificates. These are not technical luxuries, but business necessities. They are the digital real estate upon which our entire operation stands." The board members nodded in understanding the expensive lesson fresh in their minds. The chairman asked, "What would you recommend as best practice for other companies hoping to avoid similar situations?" "Create protected budget categories for critical infrastructure," I advised. "Establish technical review requirements for cost-cutting initiatives. Most importantly, build a culture where technical expertise is valued in strategic decisions, not just tactical implementation." After the retreat, Marcus and I walked together toward the parking lot. "Your presentation was excellent," he said. direct but not accusatory. I had a good case study to work with. I replied with a hint of humor that would have been impossible months earlier. Marcus chuckled. Indeed. You know, in my previous companies, I never experienced pushback like yours. Looking back, I wonder how many disasters were avoided by luck rather than governance. Technical debt usually comes due eventually, I observed. We just had a particularly dramatic payment schedule. The healing process extended to my personal life as well. During the crisis, I had neglected sleep, proper meals, and exercise, pouring everything into the recovery effort. In the months that followed, I deliberately rebuilt healthy routines and boundaries. I left the office by 6 p.m., most days resumed my weekend hiking habit, and reconnected with friends I had been too busy to see. The professional confidence I gained translated to personal assertiveness as well. I became more comfortable expressing my needs and setting boundaries in all areas of my life. The crisis had shown me that my voice mattered, that my expertise had value, and that standing firm in my convictions could ultimately benefit everyone involved. 1 year after the domain disaster, TechVision had not only recovered but thrived under the new governance model. Our technical infrastructure was stronger, our client relationships more transparent, and our decision-making more collaborative. The painful lesson had transformed into a competitive advantage. During our annual review, the board chairman asked me to reflect on the experience. What would you say is the most important lesson from the domain crisis? I considered the question carefully. That technical and financial considerations are not opposing forces, but complementary perspectives. The strongest decisions come when both are given equal weight. The crisis had taught all of us that true efficiency is not just about cutting costs, but about making informed investments in stability and growth. Sometimes the most important infrastructure is the least visible until it fails. And sometimes standing your ground even when it feels futile can ultimately lead to positive change. As I look back on that challenging period, I am grateful for the growth it forced upon me and the company. None of us would choose to repeat the experience, but the lessons it taught have made us stronger, wiser, and better prepared for the future. Have you ever had to stand your ground on something important at work, even when no one seemed to be listening? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story helped you in any way, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to trust their expertise. Remember, sometimes being right is not enough. You also need the courage to keep speaking up until you are heard. Thank you for listening to my story.